Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Christ, your weekly podcast devotional where we learn to live like Christ and just learn about Christ in general, and also enjoy some coffee while we're at it. So, today we're having a wonderful washed Ecuadorian coffee where we learn about some Christ today. Today we have a wonderful story that I've been reading about this past week that really just stood out to me, where I really wanted to talk to you guys about it, because it has a lot to do with the situation that I feel like I am in sometimes, and that a lot of people get stuck in. So, for Volume 1 today, we're going to be talking about the story of Boy Jesus. Now, you may just hear that and be like, okay, well, we know Boy Jesus. There's several different stories of him in the Bible, but this one specifically has a little hidden lesson in it that I don't think a lot of people really know about. Some people do know about it, and it's there, and again, every time I read something, I always get something different than somebody else would get. So a lot of people might already know this, but to me, this is very new as of last week that I started figuring this out. So, first of all, we all know that Mary and Joseph, they endured a lot of challenges since Jesus' birth. The main ones as they lived as refugees in Egypt. That obviously was probably not easy at all. I can't imagine living like that. And the pregnancy before marriage. That stood out to a lot of people, and it was highly frowned upon. It still is, obviously, as Christians, but it's really highly frowned upon in that era to ever be pregnant before you're married. And so people always looked at Mary and Joseph as, okay, what is going on? You know, like, this is a weird situation. We don't know what they're not doing what we think is right. So we're going to kind of like push them away and frown upon them for that. But obviously, once everybody figured out, okay, well, they didn't actually do anything, this was a gift from God, then it turned around. But they endured a lot of challenges since his birth. So it was hard for them pre-pregnancy and then after they had him as well. There was a lot of challenges they had to go through. In Luke 2:41, though, we see Jesus at the age of 12 with Mary and Joseph. They start traveling to attend the Passover festival, and as they do most years usually. After that festival is over, they'll start heading back home to Nazareth. But Mary and Joseph don't know this at this time, but Jesus stays behind in Jerusalem, which is, at 12 years old, imagine you travel with your parents to like Colorado or something on vacation, and then you just stay behind. Your parents just leave you, but they don't know, you know? They actually thought that, at first, they thought that he was just amongst the other travelers, because there were so many people traveling back and forth. They just thought that he was somewhere back there with the other travelers. But once they arrived back to Nazareth, they actually realized that he was missing, and they started searching for him amongst the other travelers, talking to people, trying to figure out where he was and what happened to him, because obviously they're a bit concerned now that they get back and they're like, well, we just lost our baby boy that was given to us from God, so we're probably going to hell. That's probably what they're thinking, but they're like, hey, let's start searching for him. We need to figure out where he is right now. But you can imagine how stressful it probably was losing a gift from God like that, especially a child, and not having any clue where they are. It's a big deal. So 3 days go by, and that's crazy too. 3 days go by, and they still haven't realized, like, they haven't found him. But after 3 days, they finally find him in the temple, sitting with the religious leaders, listening and asking questions at the age of 12. Now, that right there just sticks out to me of, wow, I can't even, at the age of 12, I think I was just, like, addicted to video games. I was nowhere near trying to, like, really dedicate my life to Christ. And, you know, at this point in my life, it makes me wish that I tried dedicating my life to Christ at the age of 12, because where I would be now is probably crazy. But that brings us into the Word. We're going to open to Luke 2, verses 47 through 52. In verse 47, it says, all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. It's talking about the religious leaders of the church. This is when they found him. All that heard him were amazed, amazed at his understanding and his answers. So it's at the age of 12, too. The religious leaders who had spent their lives learning all this stuff and dedicating their lives to learn this were amazed at a 12-year-old knowing all this stuff. It's so cool. In verse 48 we hear, his parents didn't know what to think. Son, his mother said to him, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been frantic, searching for you everywhere. Let's take a second right there. I love her response. I love Mary's response to this of, why have you done this to us? She thinks that Jesus was just doing this on purpose. He was like, you know what? I'm going to try and stick behind and just, do this on purpose, make my parents freak out. it's such a, like, that's what a parent would go to, like, don't I don't see, like, that's what somebody, if I was in that situation, I would probably say something like that too. But, taking a second to think and realizing, hey, maybe it's not, our son didn't just do this on purpose and just leave us. I don't think that, is the real answer. You need to take a step back for a second. And then Jesus, I love his response even more. He takes a step back and he goes, "But why did you need to search?" He asked. "Didn't you know that I must be in my Father's house?" But they did not understand what he meant. I mean, it's so awesome that, like, the wisdom at age 12, that's what a 12-year-old said. Goes, "But why did you need to search?" he asked. "Didn't you know that I must be in my Father's house?" And their parents did not understand him. They didn't know what he meant by that. They were like, "Okay, you're not in our house. You left us for 3 days. You're not in your Father's house." But he's talking about his heavenly Father, the Father that brought him into the earth, obviously. That's God gave him life into earth and gave him as a gift to Mary and Joseph. And, of course, like I said, it's a gift from God, so they're freaking out. Why have you done this to us? Like, I don't think every day God's just giving people babies, like, with no, like, before marriage, and having pregnancy before marriage is just not one of those things. So they are very stressed out and concerned about what's going on. And it's fine. Look, why did you need to search? Didn't you know that I must be in my Father's house? After that, in verse 51, we see they returned to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. So he returned and he was obedient. So they're kind of just, at that point, I would be confused. Like, well, why did this happen anyway? And his mother stored all these things in her heart. In verse 52, Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and all the people. So that little story right there where they find him at the age of 12 in the temple with the religious leaders, it gave him the wisdom. It really jump-started him a little bit, Because, I mean, obviously we know what he's going to turn out to do. He's going to do a lot of wonders and miracles for the world. But that right there was kind of like a jump start for him, where he asked questions. He learned from the religious leaders who, again, spent their lives dedicated to learning this stuff. And a 12-year-old is in there trying to do what they're doing and is amazing them, which is so cool. We see the potential right there. But from that, this is what I recently got from it and what I was learning from it. That every parent has a dream for their child. But when we grow, we tend to break that family expectation as we discover who we are. I feel like in this story, that's exactly what happened. Jesus, at the age of 12, was breaking the family expectations and figuring out who he truly was and exploring that and doing it. He knew that he was going to be big and that he was going to do miracles and wonders through God. And so he wanted to learn. And he wanted to, already at age 12, dedicate his life to God. And it's such a wonderful thing. But you can see where Mary and Joseph coming from, and where Mary's like, why did you do this to us? Because she had a dream for Jesus, and it was not the dream that God had for Jesus. It's not what it was. So she was, again, this is like just a normal parent thing. She was unintentionally and subconsciously controlling him, thinking that she was controlling him. And it's one of those things where it's like, you have to just let God take the wheel for that one. Parents will have a dream, but you got to break those expectations, because what they dream for you is something completely different than what God has dreamed for you. And this is just something that really, really stuck out to me here. But conflict within this growth may arise, and it will affect who we choose to be with, how we choose to spend our time/money, and where we work. So a lot of this is what I've been going through lately, what is just like change and a waiting season. And it's just, where do I need to be? Am I at the right place? And just questioning where I am. And I feel like God is just giving me those answers. He's not putting the expectations on me, and just showing me the truth and clearly what to do. And I feel like God was really speaking to Jesus in that story of, hey, you need to be here. This is your calling, is right here. And when you find something like that, I feel like it's gonna be wonderful when you find your calling, your true calling from God. That it's gonna stand out, and there's gonna be no doubt that that's what you're supposed to be doing. It is tempting, though, amongst this growth to fixate on the approval of people we respect whilst missing God's whispers to us. That right there was the biggest point. That was like, wow. Because you got to think about that. Like parent figures, like my father or my mother, those people stand out, obviously. They raised me to be who I am right now. And of course I'm going to want to have their respect, and I'm going to care about their opinion on how they respect me, right? But you don't need to fixate your 100% on that. You don't need to be like, well, I'm only doing this to make sure that I have their respect for what I'm doing. No. You got to break those family expectations like Jesus did. Stay behind for 3 days. That was extreme. He stayed behind with no family for 3 days to learn about God. A wonderful, wonderful thing. But we need to make sure as well that we are more fixated and focused on what God has to think and God's whispers to us. Because if we're asking and we're looking, He's going to be answering. But if you're fixated on other things and focus on your parents or other people's opinions that you want the respect for, you're going to miss those things out. And we don't want to miss on God's whispers. Those are the biggest things that we need to be hearing, because it gives us like the truth in what we need to do. Every family also must respect one another while acknowledging that God has a unique story for us all. That was the last big hit point right there, was God has a unique story for us all. We're not all going to do the exact same thing in life. We're all going to go our different paths. And the more that somebody in your family can respect that everybody has their own thing and that they're all not going to do the same thing, whether it be like a family business that a father has expectations to hand down the business throughout generations, it's one of those things. It's like, you might not want to do that, and that's okay. God has a unique story for us all. You not have to do the same thing that your family has put expectations on you. We can do our own thing. We're all unique. We can do what we want as long as it's God's calling to us, and that's where we need to set, and we need to figure out, hey, what is my calling? What is God telling me to do? And from there, as long as you're listening to Him and not focused and fixated on other people's things, you're fine. You're all good to go. I want to leave you off here with a really good question that I had to set with for a little bit to be able to answer. But what expectations have been placed on you by your family, and how did you respond to them? I want you to set on that this week and hopefully have an answer just personally. You don't have to like message or anything or tell anybody. Just personally reflect on that, of what expectations have been placed on you by your family. How did you respond to them? And hopefully that answer is you look to God for the whispers and what He was saying and figured out what it was. But it may be different for all of us, and it's unique because God has a unique story for us all. So thank you guys for listening for today. I want to pray over you real quick before we head out of this episode. Dear Lord, I just want to pray over the viewers, anybody that's watching this right now, Lord. I just pray that you speak to them and you give them their own unique story and you help them break the family expectations while not focusing on other worldly things, Lord, but focusing on you and what you have to say to them, Lord, because what you have to say is more important, and your unique story that you've given everybody is wonderful, and it's a gift from you, Lord. Help us be like Jesus and chase after what you want us to chase after, Lord. When you whisper to us and tell us something, Lord, I pray that we can chase after it with extreme bravery, confidence, and whatever you want us to go against it with, Lord. And just help us take that and truly be within what you want us to do, Lord, in our own unique story, Lord. I pray that in Jesus' wonderful name. Amen. I love you guys, and I hope you guys have an amazing week. I'll see you next week.